Welcome to the Stop Shrinking Socialcast. I'm your host, Julia Mallory. This series of interviews examines what it means to shrink. Shrinking isn't just playing it small, but it's any time that we do the opposite of what allows us to honor our truth. This series will feature dope and dynamic people that demonstrate the complex layers and resilience of the human spirit. Their lived examples show us that perfection isn't required for living one's purpose. Let's get into it. My guest today is executive chef Corrie Lingenfelter. Corrie runs a nonprofit kitchen that serves unhoused persons and low-income families. She also operates the Lim Project, which is a community food pantry. For more information on Corrie's programs and services, as well as her private classes, you can find her on Facebook at Chefcorriecooks or on Instagram at Corrie_Lingenfelter. Let's get into it. Corrie, thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of the Stop Shrinking Socialcast. I'm so excited to chat with you. Also, thank you literally for doing this a second time because our first recording was a little janky. So I'm glad that you agreed to come back.
Of course, I'm honored. And thank you again for having me as a guest. I'm excited. I'm very excited.
I'm excited too. So let's just get right into it. Tell me one way that you used to shrink.
I used to shrink and see, I was remembering, I'm like, so what did I say the first time? So I know this will be fun. I remember a time I used to shrink when I just felt like I haven't like arrived or I wasn't the best at my craft. And so I'm a chef and I was a chef and then I went to do public relations. And so I just remember in my career, I would always feel like, oh, I'm going to shrink. And knowing like, hey, I'm good at what I do. My success rate is I got receipts, but I still would just be like, no. And I would literally recommend, like, people would be like, oh, catering. I'd be like, oh, call chef so-and-so, or, oh, I need event plan. Like, and I'd be like, oh, call them. And so I just remember shrinking because I just didn't see my worth yet. And I didn't understand, even if you don't feel adequate, still own your gift and still own your purpose. You know what I mean? Like you don't, and I think we talked about that the first time with shrinking, like not being able to fully be in purpose because you're kind of shrinking back. And that was just like one example of how I have shrunk back in the past and sometimes still do with that area of my life.
It's so amazing that you said owning your craft, because as you were speaking, that's literally the word that popped into my head about you knew you had the talent, you knew you had the gift, right? The gift was already there. You just didn't own it. You didn't fully accept it. So I literally heard the same thing that you ended up saying. That's incredible. So tell me one area where you're still working not to shrink. And remember from our previous communications that, we were saying, just so listeners also know that we're defining shrinking as not just playing it small, but anytime we did the opposite of honoring our full truth and our full self. So tell me one way that you're still in progress, still working to not shrink.
I think I'm still in progress with being open. Like I'm a very lively, extroverted person. But when it comes to telling like the full background of, hey, this is how I got here, or this is what happened here. And I think last year was probably one of the hardest years for me. Just losing my dad just unexpectedly. But then I had shrunk, like I didn't even know I shrank. And I kind of just was like, I'm good. No, thank you. And so this year has really been challenging for me. Like when people see the blessings and they see, I know our conversation sometimes like, oh, they're the popular ones, but it's not so much popular. It's just I worked enough that I can now be where I wanted to be. It's work behind this. This isn't. And so I work on owning my truth by being able to tell those things. And so I find myself sharing more of my journey and, opening up more about, hey, I didn't just become this great chef overnight. I didn't become this, businesswoman overnight, But it's hard for me because sometimes I get, that imposter syndrome of, okay, well, maybe you're not the greatest, so don't tell your story or don't talk about it. And I'm going to be honest, even for this, I was hoping you wanted me to cater something. So when you're like, hey, I'm like, I was like, me? I said, little old me? Like, why does she want to talk to me? And I really had to contemplate, like, okay, could I make up an excuse of why I couldn't do it? And I was like, no, just do it. Like, this is, and so this is pushing me out of that comfort zone of not shrinking and just owning, like, hey, people see what you're about, and go for that. So yeah, that would definitely be what I'm working on right now.
Well, I'm glad you said yes. Like, I'm glad that you
Absolutely.
said yes, because not only are you saying yes to the Stop Shrinking Social Cast, but you're saying yes to yourself, right? You're
Yes,
saying yes that, a way is being made for you, right? Like, a way is
absolutely.
being made, and all you have to do is just continue the journey. Um, I'm glad that you mentioned also, like, because sometimes imposter syndrome, it's
Yes.
not a thing or phenomenon that I always just be like, imposter syndrome is not real, just because so many of us, especially
Yeah,
for Black women, I'm always like, well, who are you pretending to be? Like, who are you pretending to be? Right? If you're
exactly.
literally out here doing your thing, honoring your crafts, walking in your purpose, who are you pretending to be? Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the world is hell bent on us never really finding our voice and our calling and our passion. So a lot of times I feel like that imposter syndrome is just us at odds with people, the world being comfortable with us arriving. So
Yeah.
um but I totally understand, why we use the expression. But I think it's always important for us to consider that, like, hey, who are you pretending to be? Like, seriously, you're
Exactly.
out here doing your thing. And you also mentioned the popular piece.
Yes.
Because when I did the Do Your Work series, one of the expressions is like, you don't think popular people work. And
Yes,
I think
exactly.
sometimes, and I get it. We live on social media a lot. There's a lot of visible things we see, and we're it's easy to get wrapped up in what everybody else is doing. But I
Yeah.
do think that, popularity is there's multiple layers there, because some people are popular because they literally are out here working, right? So people
Yes.
are connected with their work and their mission and their calling, and so therefore they will continue to revere and speak their name, because it's like, oh, I connect to your work,
Hmm.
right? But I do think, we got to be careful with popularity, because listen, some of us who
That
are looking for
part.
support, is like, do you want to be popular? Do you want to walk in your purpose? And sometimes some of people will speak to this, and I know you know this, that some of the things that call us to walk in our purpose don't always make us popular,
That part.
right? And so
That part.
I get
Yes.
we associate popularity with success, but sometimes that's not always
Mm-mm.
the case, like the outward trappings of success, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I'm glad that you, like I said, the whole point, I'm glad that you are not shrinking, and I'm glad that you are honoring your popularity. Because it's been hard, it's hard won. Like,
Yes.
it didn't come easy to you.
It
Um,
didn't.
and so I'm glad that you were saying yes. Like, some of us, our shrinking is tied up in us needing to say yes to ourselves over
Yeah.
and over again. So I'm so glad that you are. It's a work in progress, but
It
if
definitely
anything,
is.
this is a huge testament to, like, a first step, or one of many steps you've been taking. So it's
Absolutely.
dope to see you out here just thriving. Um,
Thank you. I love that.
so tell me, final question. Tell
Mhm.
me an area where you no longer shrink, where you're like, oh no, Corrie got this. If I don't got nothing else, I know this is not negotiable for me. I'm not backing down in this area. Tell me what that is.
That would be, I said in the first of my career, and my career is great and I'm very confident in that. But before my career, it would be my womanhood.
Mhm.
I lost a lot growing up with identity, just through adoption and just my life. And so I hit 30 this year. But when I hit 29, it was like that little 3 months before you hit 30. I
Uh-huh.
don't know what happens those 3 months, but I just woke up and was like, you that girl, like you got this. And so my womanhood, I no longer shrink in that. Like I am a bad female and I'm beautiful and I'm confident and I'll have anything, I'll have whatever God wants me to have. And that's my affirmation every day. And I got that. And
Okay.
that took a lot, and people think they see beautiful women and they think we just love ourselves constantly. And that was not the case. Like it took me years to kind of get this, like, you know what, I got that. Like I'm not shrinking when it comes to me and just who I am and my identity. And I think that's very important because I say, yes, I'm thriving in my career, but if you don't know who you are, you're never, I don't know what happened to my phone. If you don't know who you are, you're never going to know what your purpose is.
Right.
And so I am glad to say I don't shrink for who I am. It's non-negotiable. And it's not like what you see is what you get. No, I'm working on myself. I'm healing every single day. But who I am at the core of Corrie is non-negotiable. And I love her. I love that. And I'm glad to say that because it took, like, if you even knew how long it took to be able to just be like, you know what, I'm rocking with this and I got this. And I love that I can say that now.
Listen, I mean, like you said, if you are unsure about who you are at the core, right? Like that is where everything radiates out of. So that's why, and a lot of the work that I've been doing with folks is trying to get us to the root or the origin of who we are, because I work with all different types of people and folks who are highly accomplished and focused and have gifts and talents and are owning them. But when that doubt creeps in because it's not cemented because of core beliefs, it sends us in a tailspin.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying, like, hey, at the heart of all the work that we do, at the heart of all of our callings, all of our gifts, is figuring out who we are alongside those things. That's not all who we are, right? Like we are at the core, whatever that means, whatever's in our heart, reflected back in the work also that we put out into the world. So
exactly.
Thank you for being so vulnerable. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad that you realize that you're a dope chick. I'm glad that you're walking in that light as well. Is there anything else before we get out of here? Is there anything else that you want to say to viewers and listeners that you didn't get a chance to say, or want to leave us with a good word? Anything that you feel like would be helpful?
I remember a good piece of last time when we were talking about volunteering and when to know when to be a volunteer and when to know to own your craft, own your worth, and not shrink back. There's a season for it's a season for apprenticeship and interning and volunteering. And then there's a season for, hey, I'm not shrinking back. I got this, and just own it. And I think that's what I would leave with anybody. And that's what has been left with me of why I can, continue to grow in this woman that I am and just in life, is just knowing the difference of your worth and selling yourself short and just, like you said, not shrinking back and then just living your truth on all areas, like career, personal, spiritual, all levels, So yeah, that would be my little snippet that I would add.
I'm glad you remember that, because that conversation, that was one of the gems, right?
Yes.
When we talked about some of us, we are shrinking because we're not charging our worth for projects, or we're out here giving away our time, our treasure, all types of things just because we're afraid to really own and have people acknowledge the full value of it. And as a person who is very much community centered and has a strong solidarity complex, but I also believe in being clear about, hey, this is the boundary, or this is the type of support that I need to do certain types of work. And so that's why so many of us, sometimes I think we're trying to give, but then we show up with this very resentful or revengeful spirit because we're giving away things that we really wanted to be compensated for.
Yeah.
Acknowledged for. And so then we're just showing up and not giving in the right spirit. So it's either decide what you're giving away and decide what you're charging for.
That,
Some of us also have hybrid models, right? Like,
yeah,
hey, this particular thing I cannot give away for free. And this thing I'm happy,
to give it away.
to gift it. So thank you for bringing that up again. I think that was
You're
definitely
welcome.
one of the gems that we talked about. But I think, listen, if y'all are following what Corrie is saying,
Mhm.
right, it is okay to charge your worth. I think we know that philosophically, and some of us are still working out the kinks because not every situation is the same. um,
Yes,
but have the conversation. Don't shrink from having that conversation. And people that really value your work, right, they'll be open to having that conversation. And if they don't have the budget or the resources, then they can also let you know that too. But some of us, oh my goodness, we don't have that conversation because we just think people are just going to be like bestow the blessing upon us, like,
no,
oh,
and that's
they're gonna see the value of me, and then they're gonna like give me the thing
no.
afterwards. It's like, girl, listen, your check getting ready to be divided up among everybody else who said they needed to get paid.
Exactly. And I used to do that. And one of my chef mentors said to me one time, because I called them so mad, like, oh my gosh, this person didn't pay and he said to me, not every good thing, like not every invoice is one your name has to be on. And I'm like, okay. And so when I took that and I said, you know what, I'm not going to argue with people about what they think my worth is.
Right.
I'm just going to wait for the people that see my worth come along. And when I tell you that year after, all events, it was not like, no, some yes budgeted, but most of them were like, you tell me a number. This
Right.
is what I want to pay. When it was always higher than what I was like, oh, 500. And they're like 15,
Right.
so
Right.
it's just like, don't shrink back, because that's when you really get that, like, the light bulb comes off over your head. And when you stop shrinking, that's when you can manifest those things in your life that are supposed to come to you, because it's like oh yes, I deserve that, and I can walk in that. So
Some of us are blocking our blessings because we literally haven't asked.
exactly that
Like,
part.
I
Yes,
think sometimes we just kind of see the blessings as kind of this kind of this abstract thing that's just swirling around looking for something to attach itself to.
yes,
And it's like, no, sometimes you need to command the blessing by simply asking. Like,
exactly,
you can't manifest the thing if you haven't asked for it, if you haven't
exactly,
spoken, if you haven't prayed for it. And then listen, you got the help. You got to help yourself too. If we're put in a position to get the things, and then when we got there, we didn't ask for the thing,
and we
like,
don't know what to do.
how you gonna get the thing? So,
Exactly,
yes, listen, ask and command the blessings that you are seeking. Like, it's okay. It is
it's
absolutely
okay.
okay. But again, I think sometimes Black women, especially, I think,
Yeah,
all these weird things that happen socially around asking, but we have to be okay with that, right? Like, we have to be okay
absolutely.
that who is not for us, right? They're going to feel the discomfort, and who is there and ready to acknowledge it, and they're going to be like, oh, okay, fine.
Exactly.
Here's the
Here you
thing.
go.
Or here you
Yep.
go. Look forward to working with you, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, um, no, I'm excited to see all the things that are continuing to be done in your life. Like, it just
Thank
keep
you.
every time I say it, it's like, oh, Corey, like, here's another blessing. Here's another opportunity. Like, Corey is leveling up. Corey is walking in her full purpose, and it's a joy to watch and witness.
Thank
I can't
you.
wait to see everything continue that is being done in your life.
Thank you so much. And thank you again, because I love you so much and you really are doing it, and you're going to continue to do it, and only bigger and better. So I really am honored that you chose me, and I'm excited for this entire series yeah, it's going to be dope.
I'm excited too. And thank you again, Corey. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You
Um,
as well.
and I'll see you soon.
All right. See you later.
Later, love.